The photo captures a modern sculpture composition located in an urban environment. The central object is a large metal structure resembling a stylized man, supported by several bronze or copper with patina, figures of children in theatrical headdresses. The background consists of a gray concrete wall, modern buildings, and a metal wave-like structure that adds depth to the scene. Pros of the photo: good composition. The main object is balanced in the frame. There is perspective. The foreground and background create volume. Sharpness. Using ISO 100 and a shutter speed of 200 seconds ensured the absence of blur and high detail. Contrast and color. The combination of rusty metal and turquoise patina on the figures creates an expressive contrast. Cons and recommendations. The background competes with the object. The gray walls and metal structures distract from the main object. It would have been possible to choose an angle with a more neutral background or use a shallower depth of field. Open the aperture, for example, to f4. Harsh lighting. The photo has some overexposed highlights, for example on the concrete, and the shadows look a little harsh. This could have been compensated for by setting a small exposure compensation, 0.3 EV, or shooting at a different time of day, morning or evening. Slight tilt of the horizon. The photo is slightly tilted to the right. This can be easily corrected in post-processing. Focal length and perspective. 45 meters equivalent by 90 meter on a full frame. Compress the perspective a little. Perhaps at a wider angle, 35-40 mm. The scene would have looked more three-dimensional. Conclusion. Overall, the photo is of high quality with good sharpness, an interesting subject, and color contrast. However, the composition can be improved by working with the background and perspective, as well as avoiding harsh shadows. In post-processing, it is worth slightly adjusting the exposure and straightening the frame. The photograph shows two sculptures located in an urban environment against a backdrop of construction fences, modern architecture, and reflective surfaces. One of the sculptures is a silver figure of a man in a historical costume sitting on an invisible chair. The second is a bronze nude figure of a man standing on an invisible ladder. The background is high-rise buildings, construction equipment, and a mirror wall, creating distorted reflections. Snow is visible in the frame, indicating winter. Shooting mode, landscape. The camera probably automatically increased the sharpness and color saturation. Critical analysis of the photograph from an artistic point of view. Composition and perspective. The photograph has an interesting composition with two sculptures in the center, which visually divide the frame. The contrast between the static figures and the dynamic urban environment increases the tension of the scene. However, the composition is somewhat overloaded with details. The construction elements distract from the main plot. Light and color. The lighting is natural, soft, but a little cold due to the winter atmosphere. The highlights on the metal surfaces create interesting accents. The colors are saturated, but the gray-blue tones dominate, which make the photo a little hard. The bright construction fences add dynamics, but can distract from the main subject. Depth of field. The sculptures are in focus. The background is not too blurred, which makes the frame more detailed, but also adds congestion. Perhaps more blurred background would help to highlight the main figures. Artistic perception. The photo evokes a sense of contrast between art and the urban environment. The sculptures, as if from another time, are contrasted with the construction elements and the reflective surface of the building, creating a sense of a torn reality. This makes the photo conceptual, but overloaded with background elements. Conclusion. The photo is interesting in terms of composition and artistic concept. However, there is a visual overload of details that distract attention from the main objects. Next time, you might try using a wider aperture, e.g. f4, to blur the background more, changing the shooting angle to eliminate or minimize distracting elements. Try shooting at a different time of day for more dramatic shadows and highlights. Overall, the photo conveys the atmosphere of the city and the interaction of art with the modern environment, which makes it conceptually strong. The photo shows a metal sculpture made of repeating sinuous plates that create the effect of a wave or a star. Other elements of the urban environment are visible through the hole in the center: pedestrians, the road, and part of the previous sculpture with turquoise figures. Overall, the composition seems dynamic due to the rhythm of the repeating shapes and the contrast between the gray metal and the cool tones of the environment. What's good? Depth of field. The aperture of f7.1 provided a large enough DOF, depth of field, thanks to which the foreground and background are distinguishable. The shutter speed of 1/500 seconds allowed us to avoid blur, which is especially important for shooting urban scenes. Composition. The central hole in the sculpture is used as a natural frame for the distant scene. creating a window effect. Tonal contrasts. The gray metal of the sculpture contrasts with the bluish shadows and warm urban background. What could be improved? Tilt horizon. The lines of the buildings and the road are slightly tilted, which creates a sense of instability. It can be straightened in an editor. Overexposed snow. Bright areas of snow have lost detail. Exposure should have been reduced by another 1 to 3 stop. Color balance. There are a lot of cool tones in the frame, but the image looks a little blue. Correcting the white balance could have made it more neutral. Abundance of distracting elements. There are many small objects on the right, pedestrians, lampposts, that compete for attention. Perhaps it was worth choosing a different angle. Conclusion. The photo is interesting in composition and use of architectural elements, but requires some refinement. Correcting the horizon, controlling the exposure of the snow, and color correction.